All right. So to kick off our recipe conversion Zoom, before you get in and start trying to convert anything, you need to have your recipe to convert. There's so much to learn. This is a lot of playing around, getting to know your Thermomix, getting to know your speeds and different things, and a lot of trial and error when it comes to this side of Thermomix. This is really quite advanced stuff. So if you are just starting out, stick to your cookie dough and your recipe community and your Thermomix recipes to begin with, and then look at this stuff once you're already comfortable with the machine and everything that it can do. So to start off with, you're going to start with a recipe. You're going to have your recipe there all ready to go, written out in conventional methods, conventional ingredients, conventional method. First thing and the best thing that you can do is go looking for a similar recipe on Cookie Dough or the recipe community. So jump into Cookie Dough. I'm going to use a curried sausages recipe. I used to make this conventionally, and when I got a Thermomix, I wanted to convert it. So first thing I did was jumped into Cookie Dough and typed in curried sausages. What is there? And there'll generally be more than one. You might have up to a dozen different recipes, variations of the curried sausages. So have a look through and try and find one with similar ingredients to the ones that you already have, all right? That is the best thing that you can do, because then half of the work has already been done for you, and it's going to give you a really good idea of cook times and things like that. Because when you start to cook, you know, conventionally, how long do sausages take to cook in a fry pan or in an oven? You're used to that. How long does it take to steam sausages? Ooh, that's really hard to know. So find a similar recipe, go off those cook times and things like that. Use that as a template. Next thing you want to do is just beware of the quantity. Now, some of your conventional recipes, for instance, might be using 2 kilos of sausages. That might just be way too much for that Thermomix to handle. So this is where it's important to keep in mind what model you have. TM31 has a reduced size bowl to the TM5 and TM6. But even so, you're not wanting to go over that maximum quantity ever when you're cooking in your TM6 or TM5, whatever you have. So if you accidentally get halfway through and it's going to be too much, you are going to have to stop and adjust it there. So have a think about it at the beginning. Do you actually need to halve this recipe or cut it down before you even get started? And you'll have an idea of that by looking at that already done recipe on the community or on Cookie Dough, and that'll give you an idea. If they're only using 700 grams of sausages, you can't find any recipes that use more than that. Start with 700 grams, and you'll know at the end, oh, there was heaps of room in the bowl. It didn't take that long to cook. I could easily do 1 kilo. Then you'll know for next time, edit that recipe out. And that is how you're going to develop this recipe to be absolutely spot on. But the first time, you're better off to go a little bit under, not overflow your bowl or anything like that. Now, the next thing you'll need to do is adjust the method. So when it comes to cooking conventionally, sometimes the order that you do things is very different to how you could do it in the Thermomix. And that is things like we often, in our main meals, you'll grate the Parmesan cheese at the very first step. You stick that to the side, and then you go ahead and make your main meal. If you are cooking a conventional recipe, they don't generally ask you to grate the cheese first, because you can pick up the grater anytime and just grate it. So have a think about that as well, of how am I actually going to do this in the Thermomix? If I need to chop up veggies at step 5, can I do that? Or is my bowl already going to have sausages in it, and I actually need to go back and chop them at step 1? So this is where you're going to use that template recipe that's very similar. Look at the order of the steps on that recipe, and then go back to your conventional and say, okay, I need to maybe do the similar sort of things and do this here and do this here, rather than jumping straight on into what this one says and then getting lost halfway through. The other really good tip is in your basic cookbook. This, if you are a new or a newish Thermomix owner, this is your Bible. I absolutely never want to see a new owner say, I haven't even looked at my basic cookbook, because there is so much gold in here. Now, if you look right at the start of your book, there is a guide for, it's in the user guide, I can find the exact bit, has a whole section in here on how to cook your own recipe. Have a look in there. There are tips, there are tricks over here, and just some really basic things like how to whisk egg whites, how to grind, and when to be doing them, kneading dough, on mixing, on all sorts of different things that are just really, really handy when you're first getting started. Where is your book? Beck, you're in big, big trouble. I think you're an experienced enough user that I'm going to let it slide for you. I'm going to let it slide. But it absolutely, there is so much good stuff in here. There's some stuff in here on like setting up your pantry and all sorts of things. I'm not going to get lost in this because I'll get distracted and 20 minutes will disappear. The other thing too that you can use in here, and I love this part at the back, are under the resources. So starting at about what page? About 309 are these whole resources. So there you're seeing all of your chopping functions, all of your steaming times. So if your recipe is calling for, grated carrots and you're going, what speed do I grate them on? Speed 9, speed 3, what do I actually use? Have a look in here and it will say to grate carrots, all of the different amounts of carrots and then all the different speeds and times that you're going to need to grate 100 grams carrots or 700 grams carrots. So you can use this as well, integrate that into your recipe when it comes to roughly chopping the vegetables. If you've managed to find a similar recipe on Cookie Do, you're probably going to have those rough times there anyway. But if you don't, this is a really good place to find them. And a good idea of the cooking and steaming functions and times and how much water and that sort of stuff is all there as well in the steaming functions there. So some really, really good things in that basic cookbook. Now, an online version from your library. That's clever. I wouldn't know how to do that, but it sounds very, very clever. If you really want a lend of one, Beck, I've got a few, so I'm very happy to lend you one if you need to anyway. Now, the other thing you can do is use function collections. So again, depending on how experienced you are with your Thermomix, you have all of the modes. Well, it's gone off. Have all of the modes. So you've got your basics like your dough, your turbo, your scales, and your pre-clean, those sort of standard ones across the 5 and the 6. But then you've also got your slow cook and your ferment and your sous vide and your rice cooker and all those different other modes, your warm up and your egg boiler. They all do different things that you can do in your Thermomix. So the more that you get to know those modes, the more that you might add in. Where this might come in is something like a homemade lasagna recipe that you're trying to convert might have you standing over the stove and cooking the white sauce for 20 minutes. Instead, if you know your Thermomix and you know what all of the modes can do, or use the little info icon on each mode. So when you click on the mode, a little eye comes up the top, click on the eye and it'll give you a little overview of what that mode does. You can go, okay, that's going to give me an idea of what I can do. I'm going to actually use that thickening mode to cook my bechamel sauce instead of standing and doing it on the stove. The other thing you can do if you're not too sure is jump onto Cookie Do and type that mode or function into Cookie Do, and you will get a good example of what that mode can do, or even toggle to collections and have a look at entire collections. What I mean by this is if you type in blade cover under a collection, you will get entire little cookbooks and collections with information and recipes using that blade cover. And if you type in collection rice cooker mode, you will get all of the recipes that use that rice cooker mode and a really good overview of what that mode does. And then you'll know when you could enter that into a recipe. So when you're converting and making your own recipes, you can utilize those different modes. I'm going to put thickening mode in here and thicken up that sauce while I do this over here, or I'm going to actually use the egg boiler mode and boil those eggs for that Caesar salad, whatever it might be. So have a good look at those, learn what all of those different modes can do. Oh, thickening mode, absolutely. It is the best for gravy. Every time, I'm glad you found your book, Beck. Every time that we do, a roast dinner or something like that, the Thermomix is just a lifesaver. I can just throw your gravy ingredients in, press thickening mode, go and cut up your meat and get everything else ready, and bam, your hot gravy is just ready to serve. It's never ever lumpy. I used to throw out batches and batches of gravy before I had a Thermomix because I just couldn't stay focused and actually stand there and stir something. I was always off doing something else and burn it, everything would go wrong. So things like that are really great when you can learn how to use them and integrate them into your recipes. Remembering that this is an advanced sort of thing. If you're still going, holy moly, this is blowing my mind, go and talk to your consultant, please. We can come and have a cook with you, and we can help you with how to learn about those modes a little bit more, how to learn about manual cooking, and how to get that bit further ready so that you can convert your own recipes. So if you're freaking out right now, take a deep breath, go and talk with your consultant, and they'll be able to help you one-on-one. The other thing to have a look at is the order of recipe steps. So again, the conventional recipe might have you doing things at really different times to what your need to be doing in the Thermomix. We touched on that a little bit earlier. So just keep in mind, keep looking at that. When is everything going in, and what could I be doing in my Thermomix a little bit different? How is that other recipe that I'm looking at using as a guide of Cookie Do different, and where are those steps and things like that? Really think about the big things of what a Thermomix can do. So using a Thermomix to chop, grate, grind, mill, stir, cook hands-free, utilize those functions, really try and use them. And the more that you can do this, the more that you will get comfortable. And what I mean by this is things like if you are making a salad and it needs grated carrots, instead of pulling out the hand grater and doing them because you're not sure how to do it in the Thermomix, learn how to do it in the Thermomix. Talk to your consultant, have a look in your basic cookbook, have a look at another recipe that grates some carrots or chops some veggies, and learn how to chop your carrots in your Thermomix. It'll only take you a few seconds once you get the hang of it. And that's then going to be a step you automatically know how to do. Learn how to use your Thermomix for warming stuff up, or for just all of those little bits and pieces, like gravy as a part of another meal, or the sauce as a part of something else, or steaming something while you're doing something else. The more that you can just use it off grid, not necessarily for a whole cookie dough recipe, but using it for bits and pieces, the more confident that you're going to get overall with it. And when it does then come to converting a full recipe, you go, well, there's a bit in here I'm not sure about, but this part, I know how to do that easy. I know how to do that bit easy. I just need to go and find some steps for how to do this middle cooking part. So it really is about experience, and you just getting the hang of the Thermomix and getting to learn, what does the Thermomix do best? How do I utilize those functions and use it to my advantage? Once you've done all of that, you should have a recipe that is going to look something like a Thermomix recipe. Now, you're going to need to, depending on your recipe and what you're doing, say you're doing something like baking, if it's going to be in cups and tablespoons and all that sort of stuff, you're going to have to scoop out a cup, weigh that into the Thermomix, and then record how many grams it was. So the first time that you do this, it is going to take a little bit of time. You're going to have to plan it out a little bit, and then you're going to have to write down all of those quantities as grams. But the next time it comes to cook it, you're going to go, all right, 60 grams of this, 20 grams of this, 40 grams of this, mix it for 4 seconds. Holy dolly, that recipe is done. And you're going to be super thankful that you've done it. But the first time you will have to go through that little process. So I love to start with a piece of paper. This is what I do. I go through and I write it all out as I. So writing down like a rough, what am I going to do? I write down the amounts in grams, and then I'll write down the steps. So I say, okay, I did 4 seconds at speed 5, and it wasn't enough. So next time I would do 6 seconds at speed 5, scrape it down, repeat it twice. Just keep writing it down like this. And then the next time that I do it, I'll go off this. Hopefully I won't have to make any changes, and then that'll be my set recipe. Or I make 1 or 2, and that's my set recipe. And then instead of having a big old folder full of scraps of paper and things like that, you can start to have this digitally. Now, you could write this all up on a Microsoft Word document, or you could start actually upload them into the recipe community. Start adding them into the recipe community, and then other people can cook along with you and cook your recipes, and you can share it. Or you could add it to your Cookie Dough library as well. And that way you're not having to go, where is that orange cake recipe that I really like to cook? Where did I put it? Instead, you're just going to go orange cake into Cookie Dough, or you'll look under your created recipes and it'll be in there. So that is what you can do with them once you have them converted. If you don't know how to upload things to Cookie I'm not going to go through all of that tonight. Have a look on our YouTube channel. I have a full video on how to do it on there. Otherwise, please talk to the consultant. That's what we're here for, is to help you with that. But that is basically it for converting recipes. Now, what have we got? Can you do a manual recipe and set high heat to work? So that is where you can utilize those functions that I mentioned earlier. So utilizing your modes, utilizing high heat. If you type into Cookie go collection, high heat, you will get a collection there on like meat basics or root vegetable basics and things like that. And if you have a little search, you'll find a little complete recipe. It might be 5 minutes long, and it will have how to brown 200 grams of onion. So you can go, okay, for this recipe, the first thing I need to do is brown off the onion, and I can't utilize high heat cooking manually. So how am I going to do it? Here's my little recipe of browning onions. I'm going to click into that and just do that for 5 minutes to begin with, and then I'm going to go on with my recipe. So once you start to really know how to utilize all those bits and pieces, that's when you can really get the most out of Cookie by utilizing all those bits and pieces and adding those then into your recipe. Yeah, there are online converters as well. Absolutely. So when it does come to measuring your weights and things like that, you can Google how much is 1 cup of milk, how much does that weigh, all of that sort of thing. You can also use Google for ingredients and things that you maybe don't have. Google is such a great way to find substitutes. There's almost a substitute for everything. Just Google it and say, I don't have tamari, what can I use? And it will give you substitutes and things like that. So Google is a really, really cool one to use. Does anyone else have any questions?
Hey, Jo, I've got a quick question.
Yeah.
So if you've got a cookie dough recipe that you love that has high heat mode already in it, but you want to convert a conventional recipe, could you use that recipe and then tweak it to match your conventional one? And then that would enable you to keep the high heat mode in the recipe because you've originally converted a cookie dough one?
I think so. I can see Andrew's just asked the same thing in the chat. Now, I'm gonna say that I'm not 100% sure because I haven't personally imported anything that uses the sizzle function. But I am very confident that you can. Has anybody done it? Has anyone converted or edited a cookie dough recipe that uses the high heat function? I'm sure that it can be done. Not yet. Okay, let us try it. I'm really confident that it would work. You'll do it tomorrow, Andrew. That'd be awesome. That'd be really cool. Yeah, because there's more modes coming in that will stay. You can use some of those different modes when you're editing the cookie dough recipes. I reckon that the cookie dough, that the high heat ones are, but I just couldn't confidently say absolutely yes. If that does work though, or if that is something that comes down the track, that would be a fantastic workaround, is just to edit one of those recipes and add all of the other steps in, and that would keep that high heat there. So let's give it a dry run and see whether it works or not. But that's a really, really good question. Alrighty. So basically from here, I don't know how you are feeling. I hope that you're not feeling like there's a lot, it's all been too much. I hope that I've cleared it up and made it a little bit more simple for you. If you feel like you just need to learn more about cookie dough altogether, we do run cookie dough info sessions. So this is where we just spend half an hour talking about the advanced side of cookie dough, how to do all this stuff, search by collection, add and save and edit and all that sort of stuff. So please go and chat with your consultant now, send them a quick message and say, hey, I want to learn more about cookie dough, and they can direct you to that info session or even do a little one-on-one with you and teach you how to use that side of cookie dough. We also do meal planning sessions and things like that too. So please, we are here to help. Reach out to your consultant and say, I want to learn about meal planning. let's get together and do it. So that is absolutely what we are here for. Yeah, definitely. The reason that we can't cook with high heat manually, with that above 130 degrees, is for burning issues and safety issues. However, if it is a cookie dough recipe, and you're sticking to those amounts for that high heat section, it could, you're sticking within those safe boundaries that they've recommended anyway. I think it would be right. But yeah, definitely need to just give it a test run and make sure. I don't want to give you any false information there. But if you can't still add that into your own recipe, what you can do is still create your own recipe and then just write yourself a note at the top of it to say, or in your first step or something like that, to say, first step is to go in and do the onions on this recipe, on sauteed onions, 200 to 400 grams. And then that will trigger you. That's right, I need to jump into that cookie dough recipe, do that high heat step first, and then go back to my manually converted recipe. So there is always going to be a work around it. Editing it through cookie dough would obviously be the best. So let's give it a dry run and see if it works. But other than that, I hope that I have been a little bit helpful. We have got a TM6 showcase coming up later this month. And on Saturday night, we have a little bit of Zoom, just to tell you guys a little bit about what we do as consultants, and how you can earn yourself a TM6 or, start the business up yourself if you've already got one. So most welcome to jump on Saturday night or join our TM6 showcase later on. If you have somebody in your friends or family list who keep asking you about a Thermomix or keep hinting towards it, asking about what yours can do, invite them along to the TM6 showcase. It'll be a good chance just to see what are the functions of a TM6, how can it actually benefit someone in the kitchen. Oh, beautiful. Taneeli's checking that out now. Oh, thanks, Kim. I'm really glad that they're helpful. I'm going to finish off our recording